Welcome to the Effortless English Show with the world's #1 English teacher, AJ Hoge, where AJ's more than 40 million students worldwide finally learn English once and for all, without the boring textbooks, classrooms, and grammar drills. Here's AJ with a quick piece to help you learn to speak fluent English effortlessly.
Hi, my name is AJ Hoge. I am the author of Effortless English. Learn to speak English like a native. Go to effortlessenglishclub.com. Join my VIP program because you want to speak English powerfully, speak English fluently, speak English confidently, think in English. Join my VIP program. Commit to my VIP program. Join my VIP program today at effortlessenglishclub.com. That's effortlessenglishclub.com. I started reading again, The Alchemist. Started rereading it today by Paulo Coelho. Is that how you pronounce his name? Brazilians, you have to tell me. On Instagram, one of our Brazilian Effortless English fans tried to correct my pronunciation. So I think this is a better pronunciation, but I don't know because I don't know how to pronounce Portuguese. Coelho. Let me know, Brazilians, if that's correct. You can tell me on Gab, by the way. That's where a lot of my really strong followers are following me now on Gab. It's now gab.com, gab.ai, or gab.com. They finally got .com. Lots of Brazilians on there, by the way. Lots of Brazilians on Gab. Follow me at Gab. Gab.com. Follow me at AJ Hoge, AJHOGE, my name. Gab.com, AJ Hoge. And tell me, how's my pronunciation of Paulo Coelho? Paulo Coelho. Reading the beginning of The Alchemist, started thinking about the topic of virtue or virtues. I did a strong VIP lesson about this topic, the virtues. Plato, the philosopher Plato, ancient Greek philosopher Plato, described what he called the 4 cardinal virtues, kind of like the 4 most important virtues. They're sometimes called the classic virtues because that time of history in the Mediterranean area is called the classic time period, Greece and Rome. The classic virtues. So what were the 4 classic virtues that Plato described? They were and are courage, number 1, courage. Number 2, wisdom. Number 3, moderation. And number 4, justice. These are the 4 classic virtues of Plato: courage, wisdom, moderation, and justice. So these are the 4 virtues, meaning the 4 qualities of goodness, right? The 4 good qualities to develop in yourself. The virtues, and especially in the past, not so much now, unfortunately, but in the past, these were taught to everyone, and that these were, the 4 virtues to try to create in yourself, to live a good life, to be a good person. And you can see it doesn't matter it doesn't matter which religion or country you're from, these 4 virtues are strong. And you will find these 4 virtues, by the way, taught in many, many, many different cultures, possibly all cultures, but certainly many of the very famous and important classical philosophers, books teach a variation of these virtues. Let's look at each one. Courage. Well, courage is obvious. We know what courage means. Courage means the opposite of being a coward, right? It means overcoming fear, right? The ability to overcome fear. You have courage when you take action even when you're afraid. Right? It's the ability to conquer fear, to defeat fear. Courage. Courage is very important. Without courage, we're cowards, right? So without courage, we are slaves to fear. We're afraid to do what is right. We know something is right, but we don't do it because we're afraid. That means we lack courage. So you can see how even if someone is not evil, even if someone doesn't want to harm other people, doesn't want to cause pain, doesn't want to do bad things, but if they're a coward, if they don't have courage, what will they do? Well, then they will allow evil things to happen because they're afraid to fight it, right? Or people who are cowards will do evil just because they're afraid to do good. Sometimes doing what's right is scary, right? Because sometimes the stronger group are the evil ones, and they will try to push you to do what is wrong, and then it takes courage to go against them. I'll give you an easy, obvious example from now is all this crazy stuff about the in America, what they call transgender, transvestites, women pretending to be men, men pretending to be women. And they're pushing this in the American media all the time, that we're supposed to accept this, that a man in a dress with makeup pretending to be a woman is actually a woman, and we're supposed to accept this and believe it, and we're supposed to say this is true. And many, many people will follow this. They will say this is true. They will see this man and they'll say she. They'll call him a she. Most of the people doing that know it's false, know it's wrong, know there's something wrong with this person, they're mentally ill. They know it, but they're afraid to say it. They're afraid to say the truth. Why? Because the media has a lot of power. Because this kind of socialistic craziness is like a religion now. And they're afraid to go against those people because they have power. I don't know, maybe they're afraid of losing their job. Maybe they're afraid of being criticized. And so they will pretend. Or they will just say nothing. They won't criticize it. They won't criticize it. They will allow schools to teach this to their children, that this is okay, that it's normal, that it's healthy. But it's not. It's sick. It's wrong. And you have to have a little courage now to say that, unfortunately, in some countries, and certainly in the United States, probably in large parts of Europe, possibly in other countries as well. So many times people will do evil, or they will go along with evil. They will go along with lies simply because they are afraid. They know the truth, but they're afraid. So you see how courage is very important. Courage. And also, of course, we saw this with homeschooling. We've seen this with becoming free, financially free, or free in any other way. It takes courage, right? Following everybody else, following what you're told to do, that does not take courage. But if you want to be free, if you want to be truthful, if you want to be good, you need courage. Next, wisdom. Well, wisdom is knowing the difference between right and wrong. Wisdom is knowing the truth, seeing and understanding truth and meaning. This comes from knowledge, and it also comes from direct experience. So, of course, you can see why this also it's important to know what is right and what is wrong, what is truthful and what is not truthful. And this is very difficult now, again, because we live in a time of super propaganda. Right? We carry around propaganda in our pockets. Right? It's called cell phones. People are getting propaganda and lies fed to them. Constantly. The schools are full of propaganda and lies. The media, movies, TV shows, the fake news. So you've got to get out in the real world and test these things yourself. Very important. To see clearly, to get wisdom. So again, some people do evil, some people do bad things because they are believing something that is false, that is untrue. Number 3 is moderation. Moderation. Moderation is really about self-control, self-discipline. Moderation has the idea of the middle way. Not too much, not too little. This requires some self-control. It means you're not controlled by your desires. You're not controlled by addictions. It's really quite similar to equanimity. And you can see this. If you don't have self-control, you also become kind of a slave, right? Because then you just follow around your wild desires, right? And then these can lead you to do some terrible things, right? We know people who, for example, have no moderation, no self-control about money. They just want to spend money. Well, then they can become poor. They can do lots of stupid things. Or some people have no moderation of trying to get money. And they just more, right? There's no end to wanting it. More. And they can become quite evil and do very terrible things just to get more money. There's no self-control. If you can't control yourself, you become a slave to others. Or a slave to your emotions. And finally, justice. Justice is really about using these 3 in the social area, right? Justice is about fighting evil, for example. It's about taking right actions. So justice is about supporting, defending, helping those who are doing good, those who are good, and also about fighting against, punishing those who are doing evil. That's justice. Now, to do justice, you have to have the other 3. And they're all connected. You can see how they're all connected. Right? For example, to have wisdom, to have true understanding, to see clearly, to understand and see the truth, the right path, the good path. Well, you must have courage and you must have moderation, self-control. If you have no self-control, let's just say you have no self-control and you're just drinking and eating like crazy and you can't control yourself, you won't find wisdom. You'll never understand. You'll never really learn. You'll be a slave to your desires. An obvious example of this would be a drug addict. Someone who's a drug addict, let's say a heroin addict, someone's taking heroin every day. They're not wise. They can't find wisdom, okay, because they're a slave to their heroin addiction. It doesn't matter. They can read lots and lots and lots of books. They will gain no wisdom because they have no moderation. They have no self-discipline, no self-control. They're a slave to the drug and their desire for the drug, right? So we need moderation. We need self-control to learn wisdom. And it's the same with courage. To gain wisdom, you have to live. You have to take chances. You have to often go against what others tell you to find truth. It takes courage. You need courage to get wisdom. We can look at all the stories and legends of heroes and philosophers, and they had to be courageous, right? They had to overcome fear. Fear hides the truth. So you can see they're connected, and to gain wisdom, we need courage. To gain wisdom, we need moderation. And to do justice, to do what is right, we have to have all of the other three. We have to have courage to fight against evil. We have to have wisdom to know what is right and what is wrong. And we have to have self-control, moderation, so that we don't become slaves to others, to our desires, to our emotions. The word in English for this is interconnected, right? They're all connected to each other. They all support each other. Each of these virtues supports the others. These virtues are a great starting point, a great foundation to develop yourself. See, what's interesting, they're all internal, right? They're internal. These are internal virtues. These are qualities you develop in yourself. This is what used to be taught in the classical world. For thousands of years, humans were taught to be virtuous. Now, they weren't all virtuous. They didn't all do it, but they were taught these virtues. That this is what you focused on as a human being, to be virtuous. This was what education was about. Classical education was about educating children, people, on how to be virtuous, right? You learn to read. You didn't just learn to read to make money. Okay? The point of learning to read was to gain knowledge and therefore help you gain more wisdom. Okay, that was the purpose of learning to read, of academic study. The same, it used to be that science was about the same thing, trying to find truth. Now science has become a corporate religion. It's all about money, and a lot of science, a lot of what is called science is no longer science anymore, sadly. It's the same thing. Now people read. They just read just to learn to read. They don't. The idea of virtue, it's not in the schools anymore. It's all just about money and jobs. But classical education was about these virtues. To be a virtuous person, that was the goal. And it was the same. If you were rich, or you were poor, or you were middle class, it didn't matter. You could be virtuous as a poor person. You could be virtuous as a rich person, or you could be the opposite, of course. So at the heart of classical education, of the very idea of education, were these virtues. These were the most important things to teach children. Reading is a tool. Even mathematics is a tool. But the higher and deeper purpose of education, virtue is now gone. There is no virtue in schools. Quite the opposite. In fact, they're teaching the opposite. Hey, by the way, Q fans, I haven't talked about Q in a few days, but Q fans, we have a huge month coming. October is going to be huge, gigantic. Okay, expect to see in the United States some gigantic, huge events coming. If you follow Q, you already know what's coming. You have an idea. This is the great thing when you find independent news sources. You are so much more informed. You know much more than most people. Like, most people in the United States have no idea what's coming. But if you follow Q, you know that gigantic things are coming. And it's just starting now. This week, it's just starting. We will know in the next few weeks, we're going to know how much of Q is true. I believe a lot of it is true. I believe most of what Q is saying is true, because I'm starting to see now little pieces of information coming out that things that Q predicted will happen. It's all going to hit. Well, I shouldn't say all, but it's a lot of it's going to hit. You're going to see some big things happening in the next, let's say, 6 weeks. So get ready. I will try to explain it. There's some big things happening. It's a little difficult to explain because it's complicated. A lot of it is about American politics. But I'll give you the general idea. The general idea, you're going to see people in the U.S. government. You're going to see them, first you're going to see some of them resign, some very powerful people. One guy in particular who's at the FBI, he's the number 2 guy at the, he's actually the Department of Justice. You're probably going to see him resign. He has a strong connection to Hillary Clinton and Obama and all of Obama's government people. You're going to see a lot of those people connected to Obama popping up in the news, I think. Under investigation, possibly arrested, possibly going to jail, maybe not going to jail in the next month, but going to court, maybe arrested. You're going to see the fake news media go crazy. They are going to go crazy, and they're already kind of going crazy right now, as usual, but you're going to see them go super crazy, okay, with just lies and lies and lies and screaming and yelling, and it's going to actually be kind of fun to watch. So that's what I expect to happen. I won't say any more, because let's just, instead of predicting, I'd rather let's just see what happens, and then I'll explain to you what's happening. But if you want to join the Q following now, if you want to follow Q and learn what's happening, I highly recommend that you do it, because this is the time. This is the time. You will understand a lot more what's happening. If you watch the fake news media, you're going to be confused. You won't understand what's happening. It'll all be such a big surprise and shock. For me, none of it's a surprise. I've known for months all of this was coming, because I follow Q and I follow other independent sources. But I feel sorry, actually. I feel bad for people who only watch fake news, because they're going to be shocked. What's coming in the next few months, they are going to be shocked. For Q, my favorite Q explainer, let's call him Q explainer, is In Pursuit of Truth. In Pursuit of Truth, he does videos. He does YouTube videos about Q almost every day. Follow my Gab, and I usually retweet or repost his videos on my Gab account. He's the best one, I think. I like him. He's got a very positive attitude, He's kind of funny. He's got a good sense of humor. He's the best. He's my favorite. He's very confident. He's uses clear English. He's got good pronunciation. I recommend you follow him, In Pursuit of Truth, or just follow me on Gab, and I'll retweet, I'll repost his videos so you can watch them if you're curious about Q. Look, this Q stuff is super exciting. It's just, this is going to be one of the most interesting and exciting and amazing political events in American history. So don't miss it. It's just, it doesn't matter what you think of it. It's absolutely amazing what's happening. It's unbelievable. So for that reason, I recommend join the fun. Follow Q. Follow me on Gab, and you'll learn more about that. Let's go back to the virtues. What's interesting is that these same virtues are taught in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna teaches Arjuna these same virtues. It's quite interesting, right? I mean, number one, courage. It's the first thing Krishna teaches Arjuna. Yeah, you'll remember, again, they're at the front of a battle. There's a big battle is going to start. Arjuna is the leader of one army. And then against him is another army. And Arjuna goes to the front of his army. He's looking at his enemies. The battle's going to start. Krishna's by his side, kind of his advisor, let's say. And suddenly he loses his courage. He loses his desire to fight. Arjuna does. He wants to stop. He wants to quit. Well, the very first thing Krishna does is tell him, be courageous, right? That there's no honor, there's nothing good will come from quitting. Arjuna's not really a coward. He has other reasons that he doesn't want to fight. Mostly he's kind of sad because he realizes how many people are going to die. But Krishna still tells him about courage and how you must be courageous to fight against this evil. Equanimity, moderation. He doesn't use the word moderation. The Gita doesn't say moderation, but the Gita talks and teaches about equanimity, which is a very similar idea, a very similar virtue. And it goes all through the Gita. Krishna talks and teaches about equanimity. Again, it's this self-control of your own mind, the control of and mastering of your own emotions. Don't try to grab onto your desires, and don't grab onto the fears either. Do what is right. Just do what is right. Right? With a calm, clear mind. Self-discipline, self-control. Equanimity, moderation. Justice. Krishna teaches about justice in the Bhagavad Gita. Right? I mean, that's what the whole battle is about, is justice, fighting against evil. Right? He tells Arjuna, look, if you quit, if you surrender, then there will be no justice, right? The bad guys, the evil ones, are going to win. They'll still kill your whole army. They'll kill everyone you love. And then evil will win. You're fighting for justice, and you must fight. You must do what is right. You must fight for justice. I mean, that is what the whole battle is about. So he tells them, you must, he teaches them the importance of this virtue of justice. And then, of course, wisdom, which is what most of the Bhagavad Gita is the teaching of wisdom. And it is quite powerful. It's too much for me to talk about because that's probably 90% of the Bhagavad Gita. But is teaching him about the deeper meanings, the deeper truths of life and death. And with that wisdom, as Krishna teaches him this wisdom through the whole book, Arjuna kind of wakes up, and as he gains more and more wisdom, his courage comes back, his mind clears, he regains equanimity, moderation, self-control. He realizes that he must fight for justice, and then he does what's necessary. But it's just fascinating to me, right? It's the same virtues. They're very, very, very old. These are two very, very, very old. Well, Plato, a philosopher, and his writings, very, very, very old, thousands of years old, over 2,000 years old, and the Bhagavad Gita, the same, very, very old. We now are technologically, in terms of engineering and technology, we are very advanced compared to them. Plato, Arjuna, and Krishna from the Gita. But I would say, in terms of our virtue, we are far, far below them. In terms of our society now, we have gained a lot of engineering and technology, and we have lost our virtue. Right? Our society is a society of cowards, a society of lies and propaganda. Our education system does not teach virtue. In fact, it teaches the opposite. How many people do you know even talk about these virtues? I never heard them in any of my schooling, including university. Courage, wisdom, moderation, justice, equanimity. It's nice to have the technology. It's nice. Life is easy now. Life is easier. Physical life. Food, shelter, electricity, all our little gadgets. That's great, but what we have lost is meaning and virtue. So when you do independent learning, independent education for yourself as an adult, and for your children, homeschooling, I recommend, of course you're the boss, so you decide, but my recommendation, I recommend that these virtues be the center of your education system. Whatever you decide to do, let's just say, for example, you decide to homeschool your children. And you think, well, how do I do it? How should I do it? Should I buy a program? Should I use an online program? Should I just choose myself? Should we just get books from the library? How should I do it? Well, I think the first starting point is, what are your goals? What are your goals? What are you trying to do? What is the purpose of education? This is a very important thing to think about. This question at the beginning. We have to start with this question. What is the purpose of education? Right? What are the most important aspects of education? What's the most important about education? You have to start there. Educating for what? And see, most people don't think about this. They don't even think about this. They just think, reading, math, some science, history. They just think of, those are topics, okay? That's not a purpose, that's a topic. Science is a topic. Reading is just a topic and a skill. It's not a purpose. Reading has no meaning by itself. It depends what you read and why you're reading. That's where the meaning comes from. That's where the purpose comes from. The same with science. Just studying a lot of scientific facts, there's no meaning there. Same with math. Just learning a bunch of math. There's no meaning. There's no purpose there. What is the purpose of education? Right? If you're thinking about your own children, why are you educating them? What are you doing it for? What is the purpose? What are you trying to accomplish with this? Now, most people, like I said, they just focus on topics or skills, reading, science. They don't think deeply enough about it. A few others think maybe a little more deeply, but it's a shallow answer. They just think, get a job, money, get a job. That's usually what it is. Oh, so they can get a good job. The purpose of education is to help them get a good job. But again, there's no meaning there. There are many ways, okay? Thousands and thousands of ways to make money. All right? There are thousands and thousands of different kinds of jobs. So that doesn't really help you very much when you're thinking about education. I mean, being a plumber is a job that can make very good money. It's a perfectly good job, in fact. Owning a restaurant, that's a job. That's a way to make money. Right? And being a computer programmer, same. So you've got to think more deeply than that. What is the purpose? And I believe that a good place to start, an answer that is thousands of years old, that has helped human beings and societies in all parts of the world, East and West, are these virtues. That the deepest purpose of an education is to help your child become a virtuous adult, a virtuous person. Strong, good, living a meaningful, happy life. Right? Don't you want, if you look at your child, you imagine your child as an adult, don't you hope they'll be courageous? Right? You hope they'll be courageous. They won't be afraid. They'll overcome their fears. They'll have courage and strength. Don't you hope they'll have wisdom? That they will live their life truthfully, for good, for meaning. That they'll learn and grow and understand. Don't you hope they'll have self-control, moderation, right? You don't want them to become a drug addict or an alcoholic, right? Or a slave to other desires. And don't you hope that they'll live a life where they act for justice. They do what is right. They do what is good. Right? That they don't do evil. They don't try to harm other people or cheat people, etc., etc. Right? I mean, basically, isn't that what you want for your child? I know you don't want them to suffer, but these four things will give them a good life. It's their virtues that will give them a good life, not their check, not their paycheck. Too many parents, they focus so much on the job. Money. Thinking that that's what will give their child happiness later in life. But it won't. We already know lots of rich people are miserably unhappy, and they're bad people, and they're evil. So money's not enough. Money doesn't do it. Right? It's what's inside, right? Being a virtuous person, that's what gives you a good life. That's what will give your children a good life. And see, the thing about these virtues is when these virtues are strong, you can be happy and strong and healthy in all situations. You know, as I said before, you can be poor. If you're virtuous and poor, you can still be happy. Again, using an example of a monk, okay? A virtuous monk who's meditating and focusing their whole life on being virtuous. They can be very, 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 very happy. living a very good life with no money at all. And on the other side, of course, we know that people who can have billions of dollars, but because they are unwise, they have no moderation, they have no self-control, they are living for lies and evil, they can be miserable and unhappy, and they make everyone else around them unhappy. On the other hand, right, if when your children grow up and they're virtuous people, then it doesn't really matter. If they're poor, they might have a period in life where they're poor, and then maybe they make more money later, and then at a different time they become rich. But if they're virtuous, they're going to be happy when they're poor, happy when they're in the middle, and happy when they are rich. Because they have mastered these virtues inside. They have created their happiness inside. They have made themselves into strong, good people. And then they can handle any situation on the outside. If the money goes up, they can handle it. The money goes down, they can also handle it. They have a hard time in their life, they're going to be okay. They have an easy time in their life, they're also going to be okay. So focus more on these virtues as the purpose of education. The central part of education should be the virtues. Now, you can change the virtues a little bit. These 4 are great. These 4 classic virtues, they've been valued since Plato's time, over 2,000 years ago. You can adjust them. You can add, add 1 or 2 more, whatever. But you get the idea. It's these internal virtues that should be the center of education, the purpose of education. So yes, they learn to read. But the next question is, what are they reading? Well, have them read things that will teach them these virtues. And yes, they learn math and they learn about money and all of that stuff too, but you teach them to do those things in a virtuous way, right? So you can bring these values, these virtues into every single topic. When you teach history, you're not just teaching random facts. You're not just teaching dates and battles. Teach the virtues. Use history to teach them about these different virtues. Use reading and stories to teach them about these virtues. Even when you're studying and learning science and math, bring in these virtues. Right? So then these virtues connect every topic. Every topic you teach, you connect back to these virtues. It's the virtues that give your homeschooling, your independent education, some organization, right? Purpose. So that's my recommendation. I think that's the best way to do it. Instead of getting too worried about which topic specifically and all of that, instead choose your virtues. And as I said, you can modify these. For example, later after Plato and Aristotle, Christian thinkers and philosophers developed their own list of kind of the core, the most important Christian virtues. They were strongly influenced, those Christian philosophers were very strongly influenced by Plato and Aristotle, but they added a few more, right? Instead of 4, they added a few more. I can't remember, 7, I think. Buddhists have the Noble Eightfold Path, so there are 8. Right, so Hindus may have a slightly different list, maybe add a few more. Muslims might add a few more too. But they'll all be quite similar, okay? These are called classic virtues for a reason. They're called classic because, number 1, they're very, very old, and number 2, these virtues are recognized by cultures everywhere in the world. You'll find these virtues taught and celebrated in the Mediterranean by the Greeks and the Romans, by the Christian Europeans, by the Persians, right? By the Hindus and the Buddhists and other groups in India, by the Chinese, by the Japanese, right? And in the New World as well, the Americas. And we are foolish to throw this away. Thousands and thousands and thousands of years of wisdom, human wisdom from around the world, throw it away and just focus on getting a job that pays more money. That is crazy. And it leads to a lot of unhappiness and a lot of loneliness. So yes, you are going to teach your children to read, and you're going to teach them math, and you'll teach them some science and whatever other topics you think they need, and that's fine. Teach them computer programming, whatever. That's fine. All that's fine. But the fundamental, the basics, the foundation, what you must focus on most of all are virtues. The virtues. That's what the deepest, most important purpose of education is. And this is also true, finally, for you and I as adults, because this education never ends, right? As long as we're alive, we can become more virtuous, right? We are not, you and I, we're not saints. We're not prophets, right? We're regular people, which means we all have our weaknesses, which means all of us could be more courageous. We can always improve in this area. You can, and I can. We can always certainly grow wiser, right? Find deeper truth, find deeper meaning in our life, in our lives. This is, again, a lifetime process. Some would say the process of many lives. Moderation, self-discipline, equanimity, these all require a great amount of effort and learning and improvement and practice. We can always improve in this area. And justice, doing what is right, right action. Again, that's a never-ending battle. So this is the other thing to teach your children. When you focus on the virtues, there's no end. There's no end. It's a process that continues for all of life. And so in your own learning, as you learn as an adult, you can also, your own self-education, your own self-independent education. Again, there's so many books, there's so many things to learn. How do you organize it? Well, focus on these virtues. Focus on developing these virtues in your life, improving these virtues within you through action, through knowledge, through experience. Right? See, then when you're homeschooling, you're all doing it together, the whole family. Again, see, this is what's so great. In a school, right, the teacher stands at the front. They're the big boss, they're the teacher, and then the kids are sitting and just, learning and obeying. But in a homeschool family, focused on these virtues, mom and dad are also learning. They're still learning too. I mean, they're teaching, but they're also learning. And your child will understand this, and you teach your child this, that I'm also doing this. I'm also still trying to improve with wisdom. I'm still trying to be more courageous, and sometimes I'm afraid, and sometimes I don't do what I know I need to do because I'm afraid. It's normal, but I'm also working on this. And you see, you become a team. You're working together. There's not the big teacher at the top, boss, and then the kids are just underneath like little slaves or prisoners. It's a very different attitude, a different feeling in a homeschool situation where the whole family is focused on these virtues. The whole family continues to study these virtues, learn these virtues, practice these virtues. And hopefully as an adult, of course, you're a little higher, a little more advanced than your children. But they understand that you are all a team. You're all doing this together. It's another reason it brings you closer as a family. You feel you all share these virtues. And you all share this purpose and this mission in life to develop these virtues. Okay, you get the idea. But I do believe that these virtues, and you can adapt them. You can add to that list if you want to. But virtue, living a virtuous life, that's the core purpose of education, the deepest purpose. Use that to guide your independent learning, to guide your homeschooling. Good luck to you. As always, join my VIP program at effortlessenglishclub.com. You might have guessed that my VIP program is very much focused on teaching virtue. You will notice the topics I choose every month. That inside my lessons, I'm teaching you English, of course. I'm teaching you to speak powerfully. I'm teaching you to speak fluently. I'm teaching you to think in English. I'm teaching you to speak effortlessly and confidently in English, to master English. That's important. It's an important skill. I know. It's very important for you in your life. It's a very important goal for you, of course. Of course. Teaching you that, training you to speak English fluently and powerfully. And there's a deeper purpose. What makes the VIP program meaningful are the virtues that I'm also teaching. And of course, just like homeschooling, I'm learning these virtues too. Always. I'm always trying to develop these virtues. I'm trying to become more courageous, to gain more self-discipline and moderation and equanimity, to fight for justice more, to gain more and more and more wisdom. Just like you. So as I teach these virtues in the VIP program in many different ways, I'm also learning them and practicing them with you. So join my VIP program today. Join my VIP program at effortlessenglishclub.com. Join today at effortlessenglishclub.com.